Hello, everybody. Michael Robertson Jr. here. This is episode 20 or 19?
I think it's probably 19. I don't think it's 20 because I feel like we would have like really made that a milestone for us.
We're gonna go with 19.
Okay.
So this is either episode 19 or 20. We're not sure which. We're going with 19 for right now, and we're doing. Oh well, and first though, Jason, welcome, my co-host, Mr. Jason Collins.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm here too, guys.
Almost forgot you. Boy, we are off to a rocky start. You know why, though? You know why this is a rocky start? Is because we took a week off because you went on vacation, which well-deserved, obviously. But I guess we're off our game this morning. So
We are, and we're recording. We're back at HQ today, so I'm back at your house and getting everything set up. We added like 4 cameras, it seems like, today. So there's a lot going on.
Quite the elaborate setup this morning. But yeah, so you went on vacation, and this is also the second episode that we've recorded in the daylight, which the last one was, I think, our last episode because you were getting ready to go on vacation. So
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep.
Yeah,
and I think it's fitting for us to be recording in the daylight.
Ooh, look at this.
With the movie that we were talking about.
Right. Yeah, that's a nice little segue there.
Yeah.
What is tonight's movie, Jason?
Well, today's movie
yeah.
is, and we're back and forth on how this is pronounced, but I'm going to go with Midsommar.
It's definitely pronounced Midsommar, the way the movie is titled. Yes.
Yeah. So this is written and directed by Ari Aster. This was his second feature film following Hereditary, released July 2019. Runtime of 148 minutes.
Long movie, and the
director's cut
is damn near 3 hours.
Yeah, 172 minutes. IMDb rating of 7.1 out of 10 based on 166,296 ratings. Now, this was a fun movie, and I don't know. What did you think?
Well, I think you might be the first person that's ever called this movie fun.
I disagree. I think there was a lot of like really strange interviews that I saw on this movie. In particular, some that were screened in Sweden, where people were laughing. They called this a black comedy, a dark horror.
Yeah, a black comedy is the phrase. Yeah, almost like a comedic horror. Yeah. I did read some about that. So that's interesting because I talked before you and I had even started this podcast. I talked to my Facebook group and some of my readers in my weekly updates about this movie because I was a huge fan of Hereditary. I thought it was a fantastic film. I was, like an instant Ari Aster fan at that point. And then when Midsommar came out, I remember when the trailer dropped, I was all excited, like, oh, his new movie. And I watched the trailer and I was like, what is this even about? Like, what is going on here? Because it was so jarring. It just 100% sunlight, the entire time. And that was just so weird. And I remember talking after I watched it where this was one of the movies, and I don't remember other films where I have ever felt so uneasy watching it to the point that I wasn't sure I was enjoying it. Like when I was actually watching the movie. And when it was over with, I had time to reflect. I was like, this is just a fantastic film. It's an amazing filmmaking spectacle, but I still stand by the fact I don't know that I actually really liked watching it. There's just so much about it that sets me like off with just a dreadful feeling.
Yeah, it can be a bit disturbing at times, but I don't think I loved watching it. There were times where even it was a very graphic movie, but it wasn't gory, even though we were dealing with Ari Aster's smashed faces and some cultish suicides and other strange rituals that were happening. I didn't find myself, I was never shying away. I think it was just beautiful the whole time.
You didn't think that the guy getting his face and skull smashed to bits was what you would call gory?
That's just it. I don't think it was gory. I think it was graphic, but I don't think it was gory. Okay. Like it was like so beautifully shot and colored to where it didn't really, I wasn't turned away from it. Like, it didn't affect me in that way. It almost had the total opposite effect. And I think it just had everything to do with just the composition and the score that was going on and what was happening. And then the coloring of it. It was just so beautiful. Like I knew what I was watching, but I enjoyed it. And I think that might be a little weird, but I think it was just a really pleasant movie to watch from an aesthetic.
Pleasant. Good gosh, that's words I just would not have ever expected.
I
about
love this movie. I just thought it was so beautifully shot and just so different than everything we've ever seen before.
Very unique. And I don't want my comments already to make it sound like I didn't like this movie, because I do think it's a fantastic film, but pleasant and fun are not words that I would associate with it. So before we dive into it more, let's talk a little bit more about the crew and the cast. So yes, this is Ari Aster's follow-up to Hereditary, starring Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, Wilhelm Blomgren, William Jackson Harper, and Will Poulter. Really don't recognize anybody here except Florence Pugh and Will Poulter.
Well, I know William Jackson Harper from the NBC series, I think it is. What's it called? The Good Place. Is it NBC? I think it's The Good Place, though.
Is that him?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen episodes of that show. I didn't even put those together. Interesting.
Yeah, and he plays sort of the same character in both shows. This very intellectual, just very, very interested in culture. He almost played the same role. So it was pleasant. It was nice to see him. I haven't seen him in anything else. And so it was just cool to see him there as well.
Gotcha. And coming along with Ari Aster, same cinematographer from Hereditary, Pavel Pogorzelski. So I guess that's cool. We've talked about that before. There's been a couple writer, director, cinematographer duos that we've seen. Mike Flanagan has used the same cinematographer for several of his projects, and I just love that, because it's almost like they're working together and they just have this shared vision that they understand each other with what they're doing. I think that's really cool when they can have partnerships like that.
Yeah, and I think the same guy actually scored this one as well. He did all the music.
I looked at the composer, and I didn't see credits listed for Hereditary.
Really? I thought it was.
It was Hexen Cloak was the title.
That sounds appropriate for this kind of music.
Of the guy or gal, I'm not sure if it's male or female, that has kind of have an alias, I guess. I didn't see Hereditary listed as a credit for him.
Oh man, we'll need to check that later. Okay. Yeah, it was. I thought it was beautifully scored too. It was one of those scores that I would never want to listen to standalone.
Yeah,
but it was like perfect for
Fits
this
the film.
movie.
Yeah, for sure. And then the synopsis, real quick, is a couple travels to Sweden to visit a rural hometown's fabled Midsummer festival. What begins as an idyllic retreat quickly devolves into an increasingly violent and bizarre competition at the hands of a pagan cult. And that's really it. Yeah. So Midsummer is actually it's a real festival. Celebrate the summer solstice. It's heavily a European culture thing.
Yeah, and it happens every year.
Right.
Every year. Now there was something in this movie that indicated that it only happens every 90 years, but there was I forget which piece. I think it was actually the offerings that happens every 90 years.
Yeah, it was whatever was specific to that community was every 90 years or whatever it was.
And in this movie, the number 9 actually is very, very important into this entire I guess this cult's rituals. I did copy and paste something here I wanted to read. Midsummer's feast turns around the number 9. The complete ritual lasts for 9 days, in which 9 lives are sacrificed to purify the whole town. In addition, Pell explains to Danny and the rest of the newcomers that the cycle of life conceived by the people marks at 18 years, the end of childhood, and the youth at 36 years, maturity at 54, and then the end of life at 72.
Which are all divisible by 9.
By correct? 9, yep. Right. Okay. In addition, the feast itself is celebrated every 90 years. The feast, I don't know if the feast itself is, or if it was just the sacrifice.
Yeah.
And then implying that each one of the sacrificed equal 10 years of purity for the people. Even the feast's name, Midsummer, has 9 letters. Also, which could just be a coincidence, honestly. Also, at the beginning of the movie, when Danny leaves a message for her parents, the answering machine number counts up to 9. The second time I watched it, I saw that, or I noticed it because I'd read this. The importance of 9 derives from the old myth of Odin, father of the Norse gods, who was hung upside down for 9 days in order to bring knowledge to the world, creating Futhark, runes language. I'm not sure what that means, but the number 9 revolved around this movie a lot. And so I thought that was kind of cool too.
Interesting. Yeah. Stephen King uses the number 19 a lot in his books. Like it has spanned his entire career. 19 is a very common theme that runs throughout that. So yeah, that's interesting. And in terms of the pronunciation, you and I went back and forth on this a lot. And so the movie is titled Midsommar, spelled Midsommar. From what we can tell, this is the actual Swedish pronunciation of the word midsummer. And because this movie is in English for the most part, it is often pronounced midsummer. I don't think anybody in the film ever actually says it midsommar, because they're usually speaking English. And when they do slip into Swedish, I don't recall this word ever being said. Ari Aster, in interviews that I watch, he is pronouncing it Midsommar. So we looked it up a little bit this morning before we record just to get verification. And yes, it is. Midsummer is the holiday, the festival. Midsommar is just the actual Swedish pronunciation of that word. It was very confusing because I couldn't make heads or tails of it for a while as to which was which, or if there was a difference in why it was spelled this way.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's our setup. And where do you want to start? Do you want to talk about, first and foremost, maybe Ari Aster's mindset and vision behind this film, or do you want to go into basically the character setup a little bit first? Where do you want to start with this?
Well, we can do the setup real quick, because it's a pretty simple one. In the words of Ari Aster, this was a breakup movie that he felt he needed to write, having just gone through a breakup himself. So this was just a breakup movie. He said even the structure of the movie follows, any typical like high school breakup movie from the 90s. He said it was just as simple as that. He just happened to throw in some horror and some folklore culture to it. So is there anything more than that other than it just revolving? He pulled a lot from Wicker Man, just for the folklore. And other than that, having said the folklore, I mean that kind of explains all of the cult rituals that happen throughout the entire movie.
Yeah. He had a really good statement in one of the behind the scenes videos I watched where he was talking about this film and Hereditary, and he said he likes to use genre, as a lens to filter actual, real life issues through, which I thought was really pretty interesting. Because like he said, this is basically the world's worst breakup movie, the most extreme breakup film. So and you can see that at its core, that's what this is. They just use a really, really interesting, plot device to move it along. So
yeah,
and these characters, the main characters, the core of this, the couple that is going through the breakup, they are flawed. The guy is honest. I mean, the second time watching this film, I was looking for sympathy for him. I was trying to find if there was more of a balance between him trying to be his own person and Florence Pugh's character to go be her own person and, separate so they can be better people. I just kind of think this guy's an asshole. I really do. I think he's just he's a jerk to her. He ends up being a jerk to his friend. So yeah, I don't really have any sympathy for him. He gets, I think, what he deserves in the worst possible way.
In the worst possible way. Yeah. He's a trash human being. The same way I tried to find some redeeming qualities in him. Maybe he was just trying to figure out his own way, but to get out of the relationship. But I mean, they were together for 4 years, and the way he treated her was just awful. He was just so emotionally checked out of that relationship. And, you could almost give him that much, but then you're right. Like, as you said, he ended up doing his friends wrong, specifically, Josh, played by William Jackson Harper. He went there, Josh, to do his thesis on European, I guess, the whole culture.
That culture, yeah.
And then, as they were there, Christian, played by Jack Rayner, decided, oh yeah, I'm going to do mine too. And, we can collaborate if you want, but I decided I'm doing it too.
Yeah.
His whole theory of, I apologize, I'm sorry, but that's what it is. And I think, Danny actually said in one of their fight scenes in the beginning, it was when, she found out he was going to Sweden during this. Because she had no idea. That was one of the things that was just interesting that he didn't even tell her.
Right.
And he was like, sorry. And, I said I was sorry. And she said, yeah, but your sorry really kind of sounds like too bad.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, even in my breakdown of the characters, I got Jack Rayner as Christian, asshole boyfriend.
Yeah. And, in the very beginning, the beginning of this movie, before they actually get to Sweden, Florence Pugh suffers a tragedy. Danny, she suffers a tragedy. She's got issues, I think, in general that we're kind of seeing, some insecurities and stuff like that. And I think she wants to please her boyfriend regardless. She's clinging on to that relationship that is obviously dead.
Mm-hmm.
And so is he. And he's at the point where he's kind of right on that precipice of doing the right thing, quote unquote, the right thing, and calling it off. But then she suffers this horrific tragedy in her family where her mentally unstable sister commits suicide and takes her parents with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's almost kind of trapped. He can't leave her now at this moment where she's most vulnerable. I think that really kind of cornered him because he's like, I can't just leave her now in the middle of all this.
Yeah, you say corner, but I mean, in that conversation with he and his friends at the bar, they were like, one of them even said, "You've been wanting to get out of this relationship for a year."
Right.
He's had a long time to get out of this.
He should have, but at the same time, if you and I were in the ready to end a relationship and we had our significant other of several years all of a sudden suffer something like that, do you really pour gas on that fire right then and there?
I get that. He was a gaslighter boyfriend anyway, but it is what it is. He was an asshole, and he got maybe he can say all along that, oh, I got trapped because of this, but he should have ended it a long time ago.
He should have. So we see this awful. Which, by the way, I thought that the opening scenes and then the cinematography of showing the suicide / murder was really cool. I mean,
the first 30 minutes. Let's just get this out of the way. I think Ari Aster is a master filmmaker.
Right.
Master. I love everything about his films. If you take away story alone, the dude can make a film. It's insane. I mean, everything from the composition to the movement of the camera to the lighting to the score and the coloring and the flow and the pacing of everything. It's just, I don't know. It's just genius. I just love his movies.
Yeah, the camera movements is a really good one. We see that a lot in this film. We saw a lot in Hereditary, especially when the way that that set was built with the the model home, the dioramas, and they were pulling in and out of certain shots. And that was all in the script. I think I told you I saw the screenplay.
Right.
I mean, that was planned, and he's definitely a visionary with the camera for sure. So yeah, that was that was basically the setup of this movie, is the tragedy that really showed you the dysfunctional dynamic of our two main characters. And then as a supporting cast, you got the other three friends. You got the idiot and Will Poulter, who is, I mean, there's nothing redeeming about him either, in my opinion. He just seems kind of like maybe he is kind of insecure. You see that when he gets to Sweden and the girl kind of shows some interest in him. He doesn't know what to do. He's very, very timid about it.
Yeah.
But he also is kind of a dumbass.
He's the fool of the movie.
He is the fool, quite literally. And then we have the scholar and Josh, who is probably my favorite character in terms of just being the most normal and down to earth out of any of them.
I don't know. He was a little pushy on getting what he wanted, not really respecting their culture.
Yeah, I could see that.
So he was flawed in that way, but other than that, you're right. He was very down to earth. He knew exactly what he wanted to do. He knew why he was there, but a little disrespectful of the culture. And at the end of that, that could have been his downfall, and the reason for his demise. I don't know, but he may have been a sacrifice.
They might have got him anyway.
Yeah. That's probably why they were there in the first place.
Well, I believe it seems like it, because they kind of praised Pelle at the end for, bringing the people to him. So,
yeah, and we can get into that more, but it's I don't think Pelle, he orchestrated this entire thing, in my breakdown here, he's the Pied Piper. He's the one that led them, to this. And even in the mural in the beginning, he actually is depicted as the Pied Piper.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. And so he's the one that orchestrated, his part of the sacrifice coming. But Danny was never part of that originally.
It's true.
And so, which is one of the reasons I don't think she was ultimately sacrificed, because she was not part of it. And I think he actually had a legitimate crush on her too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So, her deciding to come was just great in all respects. Yes, please come because I think you will find a home. I will be able to be with you and you're not marked for sacrifice. It's like, why not come?
Yeah.
And, she, as the protagonist, as the person with the actual drama, the issue in the whole film, with her family dying, her entire family dying, she was in need of a new home, emotionally and mentally and physically.
Yeah.
And she was not getting any part of that from Christian. So, in that journey, it's a big, huge arc, but it does complete that for her too.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. She was never, I kind of forgot about that. She was never part of his original plan to go. And I guess, kind of going down a little further in the film, so her becoming, the May Queen was just almost purely coincidental. I mean, she just happened to be the strongest. I mean, she just made it through the dance thing, and
I think so.
Interesting.
But at the same time, there was a lot of foreshadowing in this movie. There was a ton of it.
There was visually.
I mean, it was one of those situations where it's like literally the writing is on the wall. You look at the walls, and there are things that are going on throughout the entire movie that pretty much is summed up in the first 30 minutes of the film. And one of those things, I don't know if you caught it, but in that panning where they're showing the parents deceased in the bed, or at least I don't know if they were deceased at that moment or not, but when they showed that, behind them was a picture of Danny, and there was a flower. There was a ring of a crown of flowers over top of the actual picture. So, it could be one of those situations where there is some sort of higher power just making sure pieces are falling into place here. And she was always meant to go in the first place. She was always meant to find this new home, and maybe she was meant to be the May Queen too.
Interesting. Yeah. There was a lot of foreshadowing with the paintings and the pictures. And even when they got to the colony there in Sweden, where there's that, I talked about this to you before, that one kind of panning shot when they're walking, they kind of go across this sort of like tapestry thing outdoors, and it has all the little frames of all the significant kind of events of the story as it's going to unfold.
Well, specifically the love
story with the girl.
Yeah, love in quotations. It really wasn't.
Although she did seem pretty upset when they had to sacrifice him. She was crying to her mother or whoever it was when he was the one that was selected to go into the tent with the bear carcass. Yeah. So that was kind of interesting.
I missed that. That is
because they did give Danny the chance to pick which one.
Oh, right. He was not slated for that sacrifice.
Right. Yeah. She had to pick which one was going in. And I think she chose correctly.
I think so too.
Yeah. So we get this big setup where the couple is clearly flawed. The characters are established. I mean, I don't know if you call that a really short first act. Maybe it wasn't that short. I don't know. The movie's so damn long, especially the director's version.
I think it's, if we look at the mural in the beginning, I think it's divided into 5 acts.
Oh, you mentioned that before. Yeah, this movie kind of expanded the 3-act plan.
Yeah, it seems like there are 5 distinct parts in this movie, and we can talk about it more later because I found 3 parts where it seems like Ari Aster may have like subtly nodded at like, okay, this is the next part happening, and I found 3 of them. And maybe I'm just making it up in my head, but I found 3 of them. I couldn't find the other 2, which is upsetting. So maybe that throws my theory right out the window. But I think there are just like 5 distinct parts to this movie.
Right. But yeah, the first one I think is at least the buildup of introducing the characters, showing that tragedy, and then them arriving in Sweden. That there's that really cool transition where Danny is in their apartment, I guess, one of the guys' apartments, and she kind of has a breakdown because something that Pelly says to her about her family, and she rushes into the bathroom, and then it kind of does this really interesting like flip around pan almost, and now she steps into the apartment bathroom, and then we find her in the bathroom of the airplane,
right,
with them going to Sweden. I think that was a pretty good like cut to get to the next part of the story.
Yeah.
That was our transition, I think, out of the first act, with the characters getting set up. So that was pretty cool. You want to take a break and then we can dive into the rest of it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Take a break and we'll be back shortly. All right, we're back. So we've gotten to Sweden at this point, but before we jump in there, I want to mention a couple things that we forgot to talk about in the beginning because again we're off our A game and we were so ready to jump into this movie.
Okay.
A couple things we wanted to announce. First of all, if you didn't get a chance to see it or didn't listen to last week's episode, our kind of behind the scenes vlog of our trip to the drive-in movie theater to see Jaws and Jurassic Park, that video is now up on our Patreon page if you want to go check that out, patreon.com/Hallowed Horror. And then also some exciting but also disappointing news from the horror industry this week. Halloween Kills, the sequel to Halloween, has been officially delayed and pushed back to October of 2021, which is unfortunate. It was supposed to come out October this year, but of course, the world went to shit. But they did show us a very, very, very brief teaser trailer that, quite honestly, was still really, really cool to see that it's just picking up right where that one left off.
Yeah, that teaser trailer, I just could not help but have this huge smile on my face the whole time it was playing.
Yeah.
So good.
John Carpenter tweeted it. That's actually where I saw it from. So I don't know. I'm sure it's circulating all over the internet now, especially YouTube. But go check that out. It's only like 30 seconds long, but it just jumps you right back into the story, and it's pretty exciting. But I am bummed that that's going to be pushed back an entire year, especially I was reading some of the comments, like the tweets and the follow-ups to this, and so many people were like, this is such the right move. This movie deserves to be, seen in the movie theater and, get the right treatment. I want to watch this on the biggest screen possible. Somebody even said, I want to watch this without all my home distractions. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I am such in the opposite camp of these people. I don't want to touch a theater. I didn't want to touch a theater before COVID. Now I'm definitely not going into a theater. I'm perfectly happy to watch this movie at home.
Yeah, and again, we talk about that a lot too. With if you're gonna watch it from home, you got to have the right setup to be intimate with a film, and you just happen to have a great setup outside in your theater room, in your media room there, where you can get all the lights down, you can control the ambient. You've got a great surround sound system. You've got a great TV to watch it on. In fact, we watched a movie just last night that we'll talk about. Maybe next week. Yeah. I'm guessing we're going to talk about next week's episode is going to be on Relic that just came out. So, it was just the perfect situation to watch that kind of movie. And I think if you have the right setup, it is definitely better than going to the theater. But if you don't have a nice place to watch a good horror movie, yeah, you do want to go to the theater.
I guess. I mean, I see your point 100%. It's just the people. It's just the people. And I sound like such an asshole, but I don't need to see your cell phone. I don't need to hear you chewing your popcorn. I don't need your commentary.
Yeah.
Just shut up and watch the movie. Anyway, let's get back to Midsommar, please. We don't need to scar another episode with my anti-theater tirades. So we are officially in Sweden. We've arrived. We're basically at base camp now. This is where everything is happening. They meet the community. The one interesting thing is we meet before we actually get to the village. They kind of have this little pit stop in this field, like outside the village. And this does nothing to me except maybe show that Pelia is not the only one that has brought sacrifices to the village, because we meet his other. Is it his brother or a friend of his? It's not his actual brother.
But he calls all the people his age his brothers and sisters.
Yes, has also brought 2 friends with him that also become one of the 9 sacrifices. So, yeah.
I don't know. Everybody immediately trips. They all take some mushrooms and trip for a few hours. So I don't know. Maybe that was like a pregame because they are pretty much drugged the entire time. They're either given drinks with some sort of drug inducing or trip inducing drugs into the drinks. Who knows what's in the food that they're eating? I don't know. But at many times during the film, people are tripping balls. So,
and that was that scene where they first get there and have the mushrooms. That was one of the just many scenes where there is such a cringe-worthy just awkwardness between Danny and her boyfriend Christian, where he's trying to pretend like he's going to do the right thing for her, but really he's just trying to guilt her into just doing it with him. And it's there when you eliminate the uncomfortable situations that these characters are put in several times in this movie. I texted you this, or maybe we talked about it on the phone after we both had watched it again. I was just like, the uncomfortable dread you feel between these two and their relationships is almost as uncomfortable as some of the stuff you see physically happening to them, some of the sacrifices, because you want to just scream, like, you guys are not working, like, leave him, go away.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in the director's cut I told you about too, where they actually shed a little more light into them kind of trying to come to this understanding that they shouldn't be together anymore. It's at night, which is one of the few scenes that are actually at night in the entire movie. And they have a conversation where she actually says to him, "Do you not love me anymore?" And then he instantly kind of goes with the guilt trip again. He's like, "What does that have to do with this?" Because it wasn't really part of the conversation to start with. So it's a pretty good scene. If you haven't seen the director's cut and you want to, go through a 3-hour movie, definitely check it out, because there's some interesting scenes that give you a little more insight into their relationship, and also another kind of ritual of the cult that we don't see in the theatrical release.
Mm. Yeah, there was a lot of back and forth on them. The whole like she is just trying to please him and make him happy. There was a whole conversation with when she called one of her girlfriends, and she was like, "Am I leaning on him too much?" And then during that first fight, where he didn't tell her that they were going to Sweden, she was just trying to have a conversation about it, and he got all defensive about it and was trying to leave, and they immediately reversed roles, where she was the one apologizing and begging him to stay. So it was those kinds of things are just hard to watch.
Yeah, exactly. And it also really just goes to, I think, some of the raw honesty in the writing of this movie. I mean, those characters, we've all seen those situations. We've seen it. We've seen these characters, and we've maybe been those characters to certain degrees, where it's hard to make those decisions sometimes. But yeah. It really was, I think, the wheel that really turned this whole movie was them. But anyway, we're there, and really the remainder of the movie is us seeing this cult live out their rituals while also selecting these sacrifices and kind of picking them off one by one in various methods.
Yeah, but not in a malicious way, though. They're just doing their part for their own survival. I mean, that's all it is. Like, they're just doing these things, not in a way where it's like, oh, I've got to kill somebody. They're literally just giving sacrifices for the next 90 years of their existence, in their community. I don't think any of it's malicious. I like this. This is where we talked about this before, where your own perspective, you're really pushed to see how much you will accept as okay, right? How much are you willing to just, succumb to their beliefs? And yeah, I totally agree that killing people is bad, right? It's not a good thing.
Well, I'm glad we have that on record.
But it is just an interesting perspective from their entire existence. Everybody in that community, they are looking at this sacrifice as in the same thing as taking a chicken and cutting its head off. It's just something they got to do to survive. I've got to eat this chicken. I got to kill it, right?
All right. To not get really like off track here and turn this into something that I don't really want to dive into.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between what these people are doing?
Mm-hmm.
I need to have these sacrifices and whether you want to call it murder or not, kill them in order to fulfill my obligation to my gods and my world.
Right.
What is the difference between that and certain other cultures that feel like if they strap a bomb to their chest and go run into a crowded market and blow up 50 people, that they're going to go to their heaven and have all these gifts and riches bestowed to them? Do you justify that kind of action in the same way?
No, let's be clear about something. I'm not justifying anything.
Yeah.
Okay. I am not saying that they are in the right and they are okay with any of it.
Okay.
All I'm saying is the movie does a good job of making it seem like this is just their life. The way that they're totally okay with at the end of their life, 72 years old. You got to go, man. You're putting a burden on everybody else because now you're old and you can't take care of yourself and everybody else is having to take care of yourself. all of a sudden our ecosystem is getting messed up.
I see what you're saying.
You know, it's just one of those situations where I'm not saying that I'm going to go find this cult and join them. And I'm not saying that they're okay for doing it. It's just an interesting perspective on how much it pushes you. And this is with any kind of folklore, where it's like all of a sudden you're seeing you're peeking into this other world where people have these hard beliefs. There's a hard line on what they're doing and why they are doing it.
Well, it's in anything. I mean, it's in Christianity. It's in everything.
I know.
Yeah, it's in everything. So yeah, you're right. It's just when it comes down to the point of ending human lives, that's where you go, man, is there another word for it other than just maybe disillusioned, brainwashed? I mean,
yeah, it's definitely a radical situation.
Yeah. So it's just so interesting how, we both really enjoyed this film. I'm surprised at how we have very different mindsets of the people in it and what they were doing. Because you seem very light about it. You seem very like you've used the word beautiful, which this movie is beautifully shot. You've used it, the words fun, And
yeah, I think there's just a difference, and I don't think they're doing it maliciously, right? It's
not out of anger.
I feel like it's a difference in what they're doing versus somebody that just goes into a crowd and kills, whoever's around, right? I'm just going to kill all these random people with the vest that I'm killing, because those people are doing it for a different reason, or people are just going with some sort of mass murdering killing spree.
No. Some cultures, these people are doing these suicide bombs and everything because they're told that if they do these things, when they get to heaven, they're going to have all these riches and these virgins and all this. Like it is their reward for doing their duty. I'm not talking about the crazy guys taking guns into schools and shooting people.
Yeah, okay. I guess maybe that's more of the people that I'm talking about that are doing things maliciously. They're going to kill people just to kill people.
Out of hate.
What I mean? Out of hate and anger.
Yes.
All I'm saying, there's a difference in that, right? These people are not doing it maliciously. They're just looking for sacrifices for their own community.
Right. There's the people that they pick. There's no animosity against them. It's merely just line them up because this is this year's sacrifice.
And it's like it feels like the community honestly wants them to enjoy themselves while they're there too.
Yeah, and that's where I guess I got a little like, if you could watch it and you could almost say, because they are clearly keeping the sacrifices secret, right, for the most part. So you have to wonder, like, do they really want them to enjoy themselves, or are they just putting on this ruse where they seem like they are just this loving community of fun-loving people, innocent people, to keep them around long enough to kill them? Like, do they really want them there? Because we saw how upset the one guy got when, the idiot Mark, peed all over their sacred tree or whatever.
Well, yeah. I mean,
rightfully so.
Sure.
But like, that was the one thing I couldn't shake, was that the whole time they were just being misled. Like the Americans were just being fooled, tricked, for the benefit of the community. They really had no, except maybe Danny, who, joined them.
I don't know, because there was at one point, even during that ceremony where the elders killed themselves. That one woman ran up and was like, "Didn't you explain this to them?" And he was like, "I tried, yeah, blah blah blah." And even Josh, the scholar, he knew what was going on. He understood, and that's even when they talked about the night before, they're like he even said, "Is that really? Are we really doing that?" And he was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Oh, okay."
Right.
I don't think he quite believed like that was going to be 100% that, but I think that there was a what am I trying to say here? I think Ari Aster did a great job in making the viewers feel much like the Americans did in this situation, as in they didn't know what the hell was going on. They felt like outsiders. They felt like outsiders, just maybe enjoying this culture for a little while, right? But in the way that he did not subtitle the majority of the Sweden that was being spoken, we didn't know what was going on. There was so much, and the fact that like it was so well lit, as in like it was complete daytime, that there was just so much going on. Honestly, you didn't really know where to look. There was no shadow play really for the most part. So I think I think in that way, he did a good job of like, I don't think it was ever the community trying to mislead people. Maybe they didn't want to necessarily tell them, yeah, you're coming to be sacrifices. But at the same time, there were some situations where I think it was honestly thought to be understood what was happening. Just like that ceremony with the elders.
Interesting. You mentioned the daylight, and that was something that I thought was really interesting about this film is, how they, not only did they not shy away from showing any of the graphic things that happen, but it all happens in such a tranquil, idyllic situation. I mean, everything is just so pretty. It's so calm and soothing in the score. It's meant to be so like relaxing on the whole, and these awful things are happening to these people, and it's awful from the perspective of the Americans and from us. It's like you said, just a way of life from these other people. So, it's a really interesting way to tell. And I stand by this, in my opinion, a very horrific story. At the end of the day, I mean, it's just a horrific tale. Mm-hmm. I've said this before. This movie it makes me uneasy when I watch it, because you just, as a viewer, that bad things are going to happen. Like, you just know it. You know what you're watching. So you just have this, because this movie is so. I actually have this in my notes here. I said it to you before. It is so patient in what it reveals, both from just the plot, how long this film is and how it takes its time getting to where it's going, but also just from a scene-by-scene perspective, these long, lingering camera shots, these real slow-paced movements just across like entire, places. It's nothing rushes, and that just helps build, like, you're like, is it now? Is it now?
Right.
What's happening? What's happening? That kind of thing, especially in the end. I mean, the last third of this movie is just balls to the wall, like crazy.
Yeah.
With what you see as the outcome of all these things has been happening, and they don't pull away from it. Even the scene in the sacrificial, cabin thing that they built, the where they all burn up. Mm-hmm. My gosh, man, it was like, get me out of here. I don't want to be in here anymore.
Right.
Right. It's visually, it's just remarkable what he's done. And again, I think patience is the word I keep going back to. Like, a lot of films suffer from pace.
Yeah.
We even talked about it last night about, with Relic, which we'll talk about next week maybe. This one is just perfect to me. To be so slow paced, it just fits the story so well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you had 9 days worth of festivals and ceremonies to go through. And it seemed, from what I can tell, every single one had an impact on what was going on. So I think it was important for us to see all of that too. Where did we leave off in the story? We're kind of bouncing around. We got to the actual site of the community. Everybody's kind of they're introduced to everybody, and they kind of dive right into just being part of what's going on.
Yeah. The whole rest of the movie really is like I said before, it's just nothing but exploring this culture and their rituals, and then the drama kind of mounting between our main characters, whether it be the fallout because of the thesis writing, whether it be Mark, just being an idiot and having this girl that's kind of interested in him, and then, the love-hate relationship between Danny and Christian, and then this other girl and Christian who wants him.
Yeah. Do you think that girl did the same ritual on Mark as the other girl, the redhead, did on Christian?
There's no indication that they did.
I think it almost showed it. I think it didn't happen because I think she tried, but I don't think he ate the food. And so I never looked at his water. I forgot to look at his drink because you remember the
Christian's
it had
red.
It had the menstrual blood in it. What I would
such a fun film.
Yeah. Yeah, if we really dove into a lot of the details, it gets pretty weird and dark. Yeah. But there was a scene in the beginning. It was actually the second day during the elder thing. They were all sitting down, and they were getting ready to eat, and Mark did not eat his food. He said it's like they're purposely trying to make it look gross or something.
Yep.
And he was like, I'm starving. And he didn't eat. And they cut to the girl, and she looked disappointed that he wasn't eating.
Interesting. No, I remember that scene. I don't remember the cut to her. I don't know why they would do both, because I kind of thought that well, I guess it really didn't matter.
No, they purposely bring in people from outside for the mating.
I guess for some reason I was thinking that, which doesn't make any sense, because again, Danny chose him at the end. I was somehow tying the mating ritual thing together with him being the main sacrifice at the end. But I guess they could have numerous mating situations. So yeah, you're right. Maybe it was, although they just straight up killed Mark.
Well, yeah, because it was in the actual script, it was said that the guy Yuri, or Yuli, but the guy that was so upset that
it was Ulf.
Ulf, that's what it was.
Yeah.
The guy that was so upset was the one that actually killed him. But it made me wonder though if they did do the mating ceremony, or at least had him try before he was killed. Because I mean that was part of the purpose of bringing outside people into.
The last time we saw him was when she like, come here, I'll show you. And
exactly.
He's like, I gotta go. She's gonna show me.
Right. That's what made me think that maybe they did do. Maybe they went through with the ceremony or the mating ritual, and then he was offed.
Right.
Because he was
disrespecting.
Yeah. And they skinned the fool. They had him. Yeah. They literally skinned him, and then,
which was more foreshadowing, by the way, in the beginning when they were playing that game, and it's like, what are we doing? And it's like, oh, they're playing Skin the Fool.
Yeah. They skinned him alive, and Ulf actually wore his skin for one of the scenes.
Yeah. Which was interesting.
That was interesting. That was actually the only time that I thought there's something malicious happening. Because that's going a little far, I think.
Well, so was ripping the other guys' lungs out and suspending him up and leaving him alive. Like,
wasn't that part of another ritual though?
Well, I guess it was all ritualistic, but I mean, I don't know what purpose that served. Like, because the girl, they don't really show that. I mean, this was, I saw in the IMDb trivia, but the other couple that were Americans or whatever, the guy vanished first. They said he drove off to the train station, and then she vanishes. We hear her screaming, but we never see her again. All of our main characters kind of hear her, and then we don't see her again. But in the screenplay, they kind of alluded to the fact, or in the IMDb, they kind of said that the fact that they're bringing her back in, she's like waterlogged, and they're basically saying she had been drowned, like she was, which is interesting to me because in the director's cut, there is a scene where one of their sacrifices, one of their rituals, just like the people jumping off the cliff, the elderly people, they are going to drown a young boy. They have this whole other ceremony at this like creek side where they're like, who wants to give their life or whatever, because they throw a tree in first, and they're like, that's not enough, we need more. And then this boy like steps up, and you can tell it's all part of it, very scripted. Like they know they have words they're supposed to say to do this. And he volunteers, and they pick him up, and they put this like shackle on him, and they put this big boulder on him, and they're getting ready to throw him into the lake.
Right.
And then like they say, stop, he's proven his bravery or whatever, and they pull it back, and that was enough apparently, that he had shown that he was willing to sacrifice himself for their cause, so that was good enough. So I'm wondering if they took her and that she actually became the same kind of sacrifice that they were doing in that ritual by drowning her in the water, because she was wet. Like
she was wet. I think each of the sacrifices though had a very specific reason that they were being sacrificed.
Right.
So maybe she was part of the water.
Yeah.
The water sacrifice, and maybe I just missed it. I mean, there was a sacrificial name for what happened to the guy with his lungs ripped out, but I can't remember what it was. And then you can see at the end where they're throwing all of the actual sacrifices into that building to be burned. There's some where they're filled with fruits and vegetables for harvest. Mm-hmm. There are some that are they have I guess they have just limbs and trees, I guess. And then of course what I read was Christian's demise. He was shoved into a
bear carcass.
Bear carcass, and sewn into it and then burned. I think that was for protection from the animals.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, I mean, like I said, the whole rest of this movie is just seeing these situations unfold. It's very tension filled. It's again the last third where you see all the bodies and you see what has happened to all these people is very, very interesting. It's got probably one of the strangest sex scenes I've ever seen with the mating ritual. And if you guys want to see something weird, go watch this movie because there's a lot to write home about when you see this thing.
Very awkward. Yeah.
That was weird. And then, so all that's happening. And then we also kind of have Danny's transition, into being, like you said in the beginning, which I thought was really good, kind of part of this new family where they really did seem accepting of her. All of them, the females from the older women to the younger, they wanted her to be a part of the community. She ends up winning this contest to be their new May Queen, which is basically the big honor for this festival. And then they give her, after everything is kind of unfolding, they give her the option to pick the last sacrifice, whether it's going to be Christian or whether it's going to be somebody that volunteered or they pulled their name out of the lottery balls,
right,
from the cult itself. And she picks him, which ties right back into Ari Aster's vision of a breakup movie. That was the cut. That was the I am ready to move on from you. This relationship is over. Please get inside the bear and get lit on fire.
Right.
So, I mean, it ties together beautifully, and it's such a good movie. It's hard to watch at times. Like I said, it really does make you feel uneasy. It's long. You don't feel good watching it, but man, it really is quite the spectacle of filmmaking from so many perspectives. What's your he's got 2 movies now. I don't know when we'll get the third one. Which one do you think is the better film that you would rewatch? If somebody said, "Hey, I want to rewatch," if somebody came up to you, let's do this 2 different ways.
Yeah.
If somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, I heard Ari Aster is really twisted. He makes really awesome horror movies. Which one should I watch first?" Would you say Hereditary?
Hereditary.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Hereditary is the better movie. I think Hereditary is the better horror movie. I think because I think the crescendo of the actual story is so much bigger in Hereditary.
Okay. The last scene of Midsommar with the fire is, to me, pretty jarring compared. If I think about how Midsommar ended versus how Hereditary ended, like my mind goes to that fire and that thing first before it goes.
My mind goes straight to the mother Colette
banging her head on the wall.
Not banging her head, cutting her own head off with the piano wire. Yeah. That's going to be stuck in my head for a while.
Yeah.
Now, admit they were both great movies. I think as far as horror movies go, I think Hereditary is a better horror movie. As far as like visually stunning and just amazing filmmaking goes, I think Midsommar is a better movie. And I would probably be more inclined to watch Midsommar again because there's so many different layers going on there. From just a filmmaking perspective, from a storytelling perspective, there's so much going on. I've watched it twice now, and the foreshadowing, the more foreshadowing that I see throughout the movie is just so interesting just to kind of see, okay, I saw that. That's interesting. Like, did you see the scarecrow picture in the guy's apartment?
Yeah.
Just little things like that I didn't see, and I didn't see the first time around, or the second time around. Other little things like the wardrobe, Danny's wardrobe in the beginning, very loose fitting, nothing fits, meaning she didn't really fit where she was. She wasn't very, the relationship with Christian just wasn't well fit for her. And then as soon as the very first time you see something fitting on her was before the ceremony, before the dance. So little things like that I just thought was just so great from a storytelling perspective.
Florence Pugh I saw this in the behind the scenes video I watched where she was talking about Ari Aster's scripts and how detailed they are and how they will literally have a lot of the just the little actions, like close up on, guy pouring a cup of water. And she was saying that, one of the cool benefits of having him be the writer and director is that a lot of times if you have the writer putting that in the script, the director can very easily just ignore that and push it to be his own vision.
Right.
So, she was talking about how detailed he is, and you can just see that in both of the films, Hereditary and Midsommar, how the attention to every shot is so thought out. Have you seen Florence Pugh in anything else? She got nominated last year for an Oscar I guess this year, but for last year's Little Women. And there was a lot of talk leading up to Oscar season, not whether she would get nominated for an Oscar, but for which film she would, whether it would be this one or whether it would be Little Women. Mm-hmm. No surprise it was Little Women, because God forbid the Oscars, honor a horror film.
Right.
But have you actually seen her? I follow her on social media purely because of this film.
Right.
I'd like to see Little Women and see her in some other stuff.
She was in a horror movie. She was in another horror movie recently, or not recently, maybe a few years ago. And the name of the movie is it escapes me. I can see her in it, but it was like she was a sister or a brother. Maybe you can look it up.
She was also in that new movie, not new, but she was in that movie that came out with about the girl that wanted to be a wrestler, Fighting with My Family.
Oh, right.
She was the girl, wasn't she?
Yep. And then, of course, she's also going to be in the new movie, the new Black Widow.
Oh, yeah. Yep, you're right about that.
Yeah, so she's been busy, for sure.
Yeah, anyway. What else, Jason? We like this movie, but we're not really sure why we like it sometimes. That's my opinion. Again, it's just one of those movies that I know is good, but it's hard to watch for me. It makes me feel uneasy. It's a very
disturbing sort of film. The story that wraps around the breakup it's difficult to digest. Yeah. And it does make you wonder. It makes you think about how much you're willing to accept from other cultures. And so, yeah, it was definitely hard to watch from that perspective about the story and watching what they do. But it was just such a beautiful movie. It was so well done and shot and colored. I just loved it. So it was like that juxtaposition, that contrast was jarring, right? To watch such a horrific thing happening, but visually so pleasing to watch.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed. It's a tough watch, but it's also it's like this thing you don't want to see it, but you can't look away from it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
I heard a rumor that his next movie, he wants to try to do something comedy.
I don't even know what to say to that. But
I'd watch it, obviously.
Well, yeah, I'll watch anything he makes, but I want to know what Ari Aster's definition of comedy is.
There's just a ton of people that really look at this as funny. The only time I ever even smirked was the first time they were tripping on the mushrooms and they were on that hillside.
Oh yeah.
And he was like, "Why is the sun out? It's 9 p.m.
I don't like this.
This is not right."
I like when he was
lay down, Josh. Lay down.
Would you lay down, please? Yeah.
It's so nice.
I did actually kind of grin and chuckle too during the mating ritual when Christian is clearly just out of his mind and he's down there doing his thing, and the one woman leans down and starts moaning with her, and he looks at her with these.
He starts singing, doesn't she?
One of them does, yeah.
Yeah, I thought she started singing, and then there was another old woman that comes back around behind. That was the part that I laughed at. Yeah. She comes back around behind and puts both her hands on his butt and starts helping him thrust. Yeah. And he turned around and she grabbed his head. She was like, no, finish. And he was like, "What is happening? Yeah, I got some woman holding my hand singing to me."
Yeah, it was weird. I did kind of laugh about that. It's hard not to laugh with that. It's just
that was the weirdest scene.
He looks so confused.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, this is a great film. Again, 2 Ari Aster films that I've seen. I think they're both masterpieces in their own right. Definitely check them out if you want something just dark. They're both dark. I really think that's true, even though this one is so bright. They're both dark films.
Yeah, a very dark story in the middle of daylight. It's hard to do.
Yeah. So, anything else, Jason?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 19 or 20. We're going with 19, I think. We should look that up in the break. Okay. Of the Hallowed Horror Podcast, talking about Midsommar. Thanks for listening. If you guys want to do us a huge favor, if you get a chance, jump over to the podcast platform of your choice and leave us a rating or review. That really helps us out a lot. And if you have any interest, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Hallowed Horror. We got some cool stuff going on over there. And as always, thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week. Bye.